bright the cheeks and warm the heart, for tread the circle thrice about, to keep unwelcome spirits out. Bide within the law you must, in perfect love and perfect trust. Mind the threefold laws you should, 3 times bad and 3 times good. These 8 words the read fulfill, and ye harm none, do what ye will.
Welcome to Stirring the Cauldron. Now, here's your host, Marla Brooks.
Hey, Merry Meet and Merry Yule, everyone, and welcome to Stirring the Cauldron here on the ParaX Radio Network. Tonight, we are going to be celebrating Yule, and for this special occasion, I'm not flying solo as usual, but I have a special guest co-host joining me, our own real badger, Jeffrey Gould, one of the hosts of the Paranormal View on Saturday nights here on ParaX, or as you would say, Jeff, boop. Merry Yule, Jeff.
Merry Yule to you. I hope you had a nice, the solstice was last night at 9:30 p.m. our local time here on the West Coast, so hope you had a nice time. I knew it was going to be a long night, though. I don't know why.
Yes, that's what they say, you know. But, I think a lot of people confuse Christmas and Yule, thinking that they're one and the same because most people refer to this time of year as the Yuletide season. But in fact, while the holidays do share similarities, they're also quite different, so maybe we should kind of start with some of the basics, right?
Exactly. Well, we do know that the winter solstice is what we call the reason for the season, despite now the fact that the other groups of worship, other religious paths are taking that as their motto as well. It's the longest night of the year. It's when the Earth hits that little ecliptic and all that. And we actually had another celestial event last night. I wasn't able to see it quite well from here, but we had apparently about 7 planets all visible at the sky at once.
Really? Wow.
Yeah,
Wish I'd known that. I might have gone out and peeked.
I know. The only one I think I was able to see was Jupiter, because Venus normally doesn't get up that high up in the sky. And this is like dead up on the very top, like the 10-pole area. So I'm pretty sure that has to be Jupiter to be that bright.
Well, I should have looked up, but I didn't. I was more when I was outside with Callie and in the backyard, and more concerned about stepping on something that I shouldn't in the dark than looking up. So, it happens.
Yeah.
But, the other thing, I found a quote that really seems to clarify the difference between Yule and Christmas. Yule celebrates the birth of the sun god, while Christmas celebrates the birth of the Son of God. How's that for breaking it up nicely?
Exactly. Well, they sort of went with that kind of almost as a joke on a Star Trek episode where they said that they weren't worshiping the sun up in the sky, they were worshiping the Son of God, because they kept saying, "May the blessings of the sun be with you." Now, a lot of people, certainly pagans, they like to do what's called keeping a fire going, the Yule fire, throughout the night. And what they usually do is they'll take turns, or as a group, just make sure the fire is going. They meditate on the fire, the shapes that the fire makes in the embers, and it's a form of divination as well, depending on the path and what they choose to do. I've got a weird popping in my headset here, so I'm being distracted. Sorry. I think it's a little bit of echo, so that always distracts me, certainly during our show, when you suddenly start hearing yourself. But yeah, it's also brisk and cold up here. I'm up in Altadena right now, and I'll be here until January, where I'm getting back into an area of Hollywood again. Hooray!
Yeah.
My friend who I've been staying with since my former best friend lost her mind and kicked me out in the middle of the night back in January. The friend I've been staying with was been generous enough to let me stay, but kind of didn't want me to stay probably as long as I have. So I managed to find other friends that I'm going to be staying with and actually paying rent. So be a little more,
Well, very cool. And I won't say I'm the least bit jealous that you're going to be really close to Zanko Chicken, which is such a great restaurant. But anyway, that's, off the path.
Yeah.
All right. Now, you were talking about bonfires and things like that. And our ancestors used to go out and look and await the rebirth of the Oak King, who is the giver of life that warmed the frozen earth. The bonfires were lit in the fields. Crops and trees were wassailed with toasts of spiced cider. So, Jeff, do you know the difference between wassail and wassailing?
Well, I figure the wassail is that big after Thanksgiving wassail. Oh, wait, no, that's a different kind of sale. That's the...
Yeah, that's a Black Friday thing, but all right.
Exactly. Well, actually, it's a beverage, isn't it? I believe it's kind of spicy kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, absolutely. Wassail is a beverage, and depending on where you're from and family traditions and stuff, it can be varied in the recipe. I mean, I went to look it up, and there are like 50,000 of them, so it's kind of like pick the one you like the best. But it's an alcoholic beverage, and, it makes you nice and warm in the winter. But wassailing is an ancient practice of walking around and waking and honoring sleeping fruit trees in winter by anointing them with wassail and then striking them with sticks in the belief that the following season's harvest would then be assured. And this kind of woke up the trees from their winter sleep and scared the evil spirits away. And with it, when you wassailed like that, there was an incantation that you had to say, very witchy. And I think I sent it over to you because since you're the actor between the two of us, I was going to let you recite it.
I know, and I had it on here, and I must have closed that window. I got to find it again. Hang on, I've got it.
No, open your window.
Yeah,
but I think it's kind of a neat tradition while you're doing that in one way to wassail the trees and stuff. But on the other hand, a lot of people would say that was a waste of good grog, right?
Exactly. Now, I'm curious if there's a Norwegian or Swedish winter drink called glögg, Gloog, which I had found out about, and then my mother turned out knew about it, and she said that it's very much a winter drink, and it's very, can be very potent. And in fact, the longer you keep it, the longer it ferments. So you actually, it ages like a wine almost. So you can get a chance to get it to
froth and bubble, perhaps?
Exactly. Well, more like you make it, and then you don't drink it for maybe a year. You make it for next year's, essentially, and you bottle it, and then it goes nuts. Okay, that's not where did I
Sounds interesting, but it's like beer. You would age it, and as you said, like wine. But anything that kind of gets frothy and stuff kind of makes me nervous.
There it is. Oh, it's right on the stupid top of the page here.
All right,
so essentially, I found verses of it.
So here is the incantation that you're supposed to recite when you're banging on that poor apple tree to get this cider going.
As long as you're not hitting an apple tree that's in the forest of Fangorn, I guess you're all right.
Or in Oz.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. Wassail, wassail all over the town. Our toast, it is white, and our ale, it is brown. Our bowl, it is made of the white maple tree. With the wassailing bowl, we'll drink to thee. Old apple tree, we've come to wassail thee, to bear and to bow apples enow. Hats full, caps full, 3 bushel bags full, barn floors full, and a little heap under the stairs.
And mine ended with hurrah, hurrah.
Hurrah, hurrah. I don't know why that's not there.
Or huzzah, huzzah in the UK, perhaps.
Exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now, there are, beyond beating on trees and throwing grog on them, there are a lot of Yule traditions, and we'll get to some of those in a moment. But, Jeff, do you celebrate Yule separately from Christmas? And if so, what are some of your Yule traditions?
Well, generally, stupid Parax page is going nuts. What I like to do, what my friends and I normally do, is we celebrate the solstice preferably on the night it happens. This year we're actually doing it tomorrow night. So we do have a small bonfire, and we take turns keeping watch over it for about 2 or 3 hours. That's towards the end of the night. That's like after midnight. But generally that's when we exchange our gifts. And my friends, we actually, I got invited to one of their families' Thanksgivings, and one of their traditions is to drink a shot of bourbon in memory of their past father. And in this particular case, it's one of the few times that I actually take a shot of either whiskey or bourbon or something like that. Normally I don't drink alcohol. I've just never developed a taste for it. But I can do it like once every 12 months, and then I have no problem with it.
Once upon a Yule, yeah.
Exactly. I don't have to feel like, my mouth is going to burn out or something.
Mm-hmm. Well, and then you celebrate Christmas separately?
Yeah. Well, when I was back east and I had people with whom to celebrate Christmas, would be my mother and brother, obviously, and we would exchange gifts, usually on the evening of the 24th. What we used to do when I was a kid, when I was a little kid, my parents would go into Brooklyn and spend it with the family, and my brother and I would get babysat. And when we got old enough to be brought along on Christmas Eve, we would sit around the big table at my Aunt Carol and Aunt Euphemia's house, and we were just amazed. My brother and I was amazed that here was this old school family of kind of elderly people by our standards who all spoke at once to each other around this big table, and no one really took turns. It was like this odd. Everybody was able to follow whatever conversations they were doing, but my brother and I were just amazed that these adults could all pull this off and be really loud. They weren't talking, and they were like at the top of their lungs, just conversing that way. So my brother and I actually took sign language. We're teaching ourselves sign language, both so that we could communicate with each other because we couldn't hear ourselves think, but also it was sort of to annoy the adults because they couldn't understand what we were saying.
That is really funny because Ginny and I did that when we were kids.
Oh, awesome.
We learned, because we didn't have cars, so we take the bus everywhere, when we were little, and we'd sit on the bus and talk to each other so people couldn't hear us. I think a lot of people maybe learned sign language because of that.
Exactly. I've actually taken, there have been what I call cultural, it's a cultural thing when certain types of people, usually the drunk and homeless or whatever, somehow get on the buses and they start ranting at nobody at the top of their lungs. Or you'll have somebody pick up their phone and start talking at the top of their lungs. I'd be like, do you realize you're in public? So I actually purchased sort of a low-cost gun range headset, and once it starts getting too loud, I have no problem with the bus or the train, but people talking really shrill or children screaming, I just put the headsets on and I start reading or I take a nap.
Good idea. Good idea.
Some people probably think it's like, I'm listening to music. I'm just like, I'm not listening to you.
Sounds of silence. All right, so let's talk a little bit about Yule's most obvious symbol, the Yule log. Now, traditionally, the log must have either been harvested from the householder's land or given as a gift. It never, ever should have been bought. And then once they dragged it into the house, and this was a huge thing, it was like half a tree, and placed in the fireplace, it was decorated in seasonal greenery and doused. Again, it was wassailed before being set ablaze with a piece of last year's log, which was important. It was held on to just for that sole purpose. And then the log would burn throughout the night and smolder for 12 days before being ceremonially put out. Now, in modern times, most of us don't have a big plot of land that we can go chop down a huge tree. And so many practitioners now find a smaller branch of oak or pine to work with, and they just flatten one side so it doesn't wobble, then drill 3 holes in the top, which would hold either red, green, and white candles for the season, or green, gold, and black candles for the sun god, or white, red, and black candles that represent the goddess. And with this type of log, it must be lit on the eve of the solstice, and kept burning for 12 hours as opposed to the 12 days that the original log was burnt. And I know I asked you to do some digging for me, Jeff, and find out about the 12 days of Christmas, the tradition and not the song. So were you able to ferret anything out about that?
I actually did not manage to do that. I apologize. I've been racing around trying to get the last of my holiday gifts, because the trouble is when you only do rely on the buses, sometimes it takes all day, especially trying to also getting to the new place. But as you were saying with the Yule log with the 3 candles, back when I was in Manhattan, there was an open group called New Moon New York, and what they would hold is annual celebrations of Yule, Beltane, and the larger Sabbats, as well as full moon celebrations. And they did that. They had a large block of wood that was clearly from a cord of wood. It wasn't like they went down to like Lowe's or Oshkosh and just got a piece of lumber. And they had the nice candles in there, and they would drag it around the circle. And in the center of the circle, we had a Yule tree, because, of course, the Yule tree, that's one of the pagan stuff. That's where the Christians got their idea for it.
Right.
There was a great T-shirt. I've been still trying to find it because I would love to get it for you. It has somebody in monk's robes with rosary beads. He's pulling a little red wagon, and in the wagon is a rabbit and a large egg and a Yule tree. And on the bottom it says, "For a religion that hates us, you sure stole a lot of our stuff."
Well, there's a lot of debate about that. But again, I have to regress back to the fact that paganism has been around a lot longer than Christianity, and some of the traditions just spilled over to both, and it's not a bad thing.
Oh, exactly. But it was, I remember one year they had where a little child, while they were doing the Yule thing, this little child starts running around the tree as well. And what's interesting is it's one of the few things that we don't mind when a toddler does something like that, because it's got all that energy that's helping raise. And what was happening was the kid was running in the wrong direction. He was running widdershins for the counterclockwise in the circle. And we were like, whoa, wait. And somebody just sort of leaned in, caught the kid, turned it around so it ran the other way. So it was still doing its running, so it was still happy and all that. So having a quick look-see, by the way, apparently with the traditional 12 days of Christmas, it was actually more of a secret teaching tool. And it was sort of to hint to children about the meaning of the Christian faith.
Well, doesn't that have something with the Advent calendar?
I'm not sure. It might be, but they had such a problem back in the as early as the 16th to the 19th centuries that Roman Catholics in England were pretty much forbidden from openly practicing. They'd get sliced and diced. We also, if you ever saw the Tudors,
Love the Tudors, absolutely.
Exactly. You don't want to be going against the Church of England. So what they did was they created this fun little catchy carol. And it was to get their message across without upsetting the Protestants. And apparently it's been broken down that when they say "my true love," as in "my true love gave to me," that's referring to God. And me being the Christian, Jesus is the partridge in a pear tree. Why he's in a pear tree, I don't know. The 2 turtle doves is the Old and New Testaments. 3 French hens, whereas you and I would think of the muses or the faiths, it's faith, hope, and love. The 4 calling birds are the 4 Gospels, Mark, Luke, Matthew, and John. Right. The 5 gold rings are the first 5 books of the Bible. The 6 weeks laying is the 6 days of creation. So apparently we're in a big egg. Apparently, I guess. The seven swans of swimming are the 7 gifts of the Holy Spirit. I never went to Catholicism. I have no idea what those 7 gifts are. But the 8 maids of milking are the Beatitudes. And I've always liked the Beatitudes, mainly because I just like them being called that. It's one word, Beatitudes, but it sounds like be hyphen attitudes. And she's like, this is how you should behave, is how it always sounded to me as a kid. The 9 ladies dancing is the 9 fruits of the Holy Spirit. So I guess, I don't know if that's where they get cornucopia from. 10 lords a-leaping are the 10 commandments.
Wow.
And somehow the 10 commandments never sounded to me like they were leaping. They always just sound like, stop having fun.
Yeah. Okay.
11 pipers piping is the 11 faithful disciples. And the 12 drummers drumming are the 12 points in the Apostle Creed. Not to be confused with Apollo. Not to be confused with Apollo Creed.
Apollo Creed. Somehow I knew you were going to come up with that. Somehow. I must be psychic. It was just obvious. Well, that in itself is interesting. I'd never heard that. So I kind of like that. Let's talk about another symbol of Yule, which is mistletoe, which, by the way, was especially venerated by Celtic Druids, who cut it with the golden sickle on the 6th night of the moon, and believed it to be an aphrodisiac, but a magical one, not a medicinal one, because, it's so highly toxic.
Exactly.
And I think you have some information about the tradition of kissing under the mistletoe?
I kind of do. I'm pulling that up too. Oh man, I feel so terrible. I had all this stuff ready, and then I got distracted because I was like, when is she going to call? So that is on file. Oh man.
Well, I mean, I found something about it too that I have in my Yule CD, and I will just admit right now I forgot what it was.
I was going to warn people to be careful also with another Christmas plant called poinsettia, actually, because it's highly toxic to cats. And you won't have any LOL cats if they've been chewing on those.
And holly berries are also poisonous to animals, so...
Exactly. Well, mistletoe itself is, botanically speaking, it's a parasite. And I've always known that. In fact, when we went camping up in the Pacific Crest Heights Mountains for various metaphysical weekends, there we found, not a grove, but we found a lot of mistletoe. So we were able to cut down a lot of it. They have some that are, the mistletoe that's commonly used as Christmas decoration is called Phorhodendron flavans, which just sounds poisonous to say. And that's pretty much native to North America. And that's all over, like I say, that's on trees all over the West and down, even on the East Coast from New Jersey to Florida. I didn't even know New Jersey had mistletoe growing wild. The other type, which is the European, is Viscum album, which is not to be confused with the vinyl album, I guess. And
or a 45. Yeah,
exactly.
Or its little brother, the 45, right? Right,
exactly.
okay.
So the European is more of a green shrub with the small yellow flowers and the white sticky berries, and those are considered poisonous. They're often seen on apple trees, as occasionally oak trees. Not always, but some. And regarding mistletoe magic, it's one of the more mysterious and sacred plants of European folklore, which I wasn't aware of. And it was supposed to bestow life and fertility. It's a protection against poison, which I just think is ironic. And as you said, an aphrodisiac, which is also, careful how much you use, I guess. Well, also, to pull it out of the ground stuff, they did it in Harry Potter. Why am my mind is blanking?
Oh, mandrake.
Mandrake is also very poisonous, but it's considered an aphrodisiac. I don't know why they kept thinking these poisonous stuff would be good for aphrodisiac, but back in the Dickensian times and such, they were saying that the way to get rid of venereal disease is to have sex with a virgin. Not exactly my idea of a good way to get rid of that. No. But in Europe, mistletoe was placed over houses and stable doors to prevent the entrance of, pardon the expression, witches. I know. So much for, feeding your horses, I guess. And but apparently oak mistletoe could extinguish fire. And it was also thought that it was protection. Mistletoe itself could come to the tree during a flash of lightning. And I don't know if that means that lightning is what makes mistletoe grow. I don't know.
I would
but
think it would be just the opposite, but hey, what do I know?
apparently. Well, and of course, kissing under the mistletoe was actually back in the Greek festival of Saturnalia,
Mm-hmm.
which is very similar to, occasionally bacchanalias, where bacchanalias can sort of spin off from the Saturnalias. And they were also used with marriage rites and such like that. And they essentially originated with two beliefs. One was that it was the bestowing of fertility, but also it was believed that the dung from which mistletoe came would also possess life-giving power. But I don't know if that's obviously, hopefully not ingestion. I would think maybe a balm or something like that.
So when you kissed under it, some of that essence might trickle down on you or something?
Or trickle somewhere, I guess.
Yeah.
But in Scandinavia, mistletoe is considered a plant of peace as opposed to an olive branch. And apparently, you could call enemies could declare a truce, and and that's where warring spouses kiss and make up, or they get close enough for the lady to hit him with a rolling pin. I don't know. She's an old-fashioned cartoon, I guess. And 18th century English credited a certain magical appeal called a kissing ball. And apparently a lady standing under this ball of mistletoe, which was trimmed with evergreens, ribbons, ornaments, and they cannot refuse to be kissed.
Really?
Exactly, which is why none of them ever showed up at my parties. And now such a kiss could mean deep romance or lasting friendship and goodwill. And if the girl remained unkissed, she cannot expect to marry the following year.
What if they got like a Hollywood kiss?
I don't know. I mean, I would guess the Hollywood could be used as part of the Yule log, I guess. I don't know.
Very good. Very, very good. I like that. I just wondered how an air kiss fit in there.
Oh, yeah, the air kiss. Well, that's usually between women who have purses that have little dog heads sticking out going, arf, arf. And in some parts of England, the Christmas mistletoe is burned on the 12th night, and that's to prevent the boys and girls who kissed, that would prevent them from not getting married. They'd be able to get married. I guess I would ward off that aspect of it. And it always makes for, apparently, fun and frolic, as it says, at Christmas celebrations. Or, like I say, or just to have everlasting shame throughout the next year. Meaning, no, I don't think so. Go away. So,
well, everybody looks for mistletoe. I mean, particularly around the holiday season. You know, you go to somebody's house, do they have any up there? And then you look around and decide whether you want to step under it or not. But we do have free will, you know.
Exactly, yeah. But there's the old joke of the poor, wallflower guy carrying, like, mistletoe on, like, a hat or something, dangling over himself, like, please, somebody. Aww. So, but in France, apparently the custom linked to mistletoe there is reserved for New Year's Day. It's I mean, here anytime mistletoe is there, there's probably no worries about kissing.
Right.
But apparently, mistletoe is also associated with goddess Frigga. And the story was that she was the goddess of love and the mother of Balder, the god of the summer sun. And Balder had a dream of death, which greatly, upset his mother. For if he died, all life on Earth would end. So that would be a bad thing. In an attempt to keep this from happening, Frigga went at once to air, fire, water, and earth, and every animal and plant, seeking from them a promise that no harm would come to Balder, at which point, that he could not be hurt by anything on Earth or under the Earth. And but of course, Balder had one enemy, and that's pretty much almost everybody's enemy, and that was Loki.
Yeah.
Yes, and he knew of one plant that Frigga had overlooked, and it neither grew on the Earth or under the Earth, but on apple and oak trees, and that was mistletoe. So Loki made an arrow tip with the mistletoe, gave it to the blind god of winter, Hoder, who shot it, striking Balder dead. And you'd think, I'm sorry, I'm not going to give a bow and arrow to anybody blind, whether they're a deity or otherwise. I'm going to say that's just asking for trouble, especially people in Skyrim who are constantly shooting out people's knees. But being hit by this arrow of the mistletoe, the sky paled, and all things on earth and heaven wept for the sun god. And for 3 days, Sound familiar? Each element tried to bring Balder back to life, and he was finally restored by Frigga, the goddess, and his mother. It said that the tears that she shed for her son turned into the pearly white berries on the mistletoe plant, and in her joy, Frigga kissed everyone who passed beneath the tree on which it grew. So the story ends with a decree that whenever anyone stands under the humble mistletoe, no harm should befall them, only a kiss, which is a token of love.
For the most part. All right.
Exactly.
We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to be talking about the story of the Holly King and the Oak King, and also about the Wild Hunt. So everybody stay put for 1 second, and we'll be right back.
Hey gang, Stirring the Cauldron will be right back after this commercial break. And welcome back to Stirring the Cauldron. Here's Marla Brooks.
And yes, as he said, welcome back to our Yule celebration. I'm here with Jeffrey Gould. And before the break, we were talking about the Holly King and the Oak King and why they do battle twice a year. And we're going to throw the Wild Hunt into it. Now, just as the Yule marks the death of the Holly King, it also marks the birth of the Oak King, also known as the Lord of Summer. And Robert Graves suggests in his book, The White Goddess, that two mythical figures, known as the Holly King and the Oak King, represent the two halves of the year. They perpetually strive for superiority, with the Holly King being victorious over the Oak King at midwinter, and the Oak King winning in midsummer. The Holly King and the Oak King can be seen as personifications of light and darkness, but this mustn't be confused with the concepts of good and evil, because both light and dark are needed for the growth of crops. Now, in addition to the Holly and Oak King's battle, I found out that there's some interesting information regarding people being mindful to be in their homes before midnight on winter solstice because of the Wild Hunt, which classically begins on Samhain, or Halloween. And the Wild Hunt is supposed to roam the countryside during winter and return to the mystical realms of fairy for the rest of the year. The Horn God leads the hunt while it's at large and takes on his aspect of the Forest King when he's in fairy. Now, legend says that anyone unwary enough to be caught out at midnight on the winter solstice will be swept away by the hunter and carried off. And interestingly enough, here in America, there are a few possible continuations of the Wild Hunt, and one of them is Washington Irving's story, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, with its headless horseman whose appearance portends death. Now, like other foolish figures, Ichabod Crane ignores the warning of his neighbors and encounters the headless horseman and is never seen again. And that kind of surprised me. I didn't connect the two. What do you think, Jeff?
Well, the story does conclude implying. Am I? Oh, yes, I am. The original story implies that he was seen in a different county, that he had simply fled. He wasn't actually harmed. But you're aware that who the Oak King and Holly King are. You've got Cernunnos and Herne the Hunter.
Mm-hmm.
And they fight not only on the winter solstice, but during the summer as well.
Mm-hmm.
And they do battle back and forth like that. We actually there was a metaphysics store called Raven's Flight in North Hollywood, and occasionally they would do public rituals and or sort of like celebratory pageants done in sacred space, and they would occasionally do the Holly King and the Oak King.
Nice.
And including in the summer, of course, we had Jack Barleycorn as well, capering, as it were. But Jack Barleycorn is not around during the winter, obviously. But yeah, and usually it's done with big old broadswords. It's a lot of fun. Yeah.
Wow. See, I didn't know that. There have to be a lot more stores out there that do stuff like that, and I just haven't found any, but I love kind of the ritualistic aspect of things.
Exactly.
And
well, the Holly King is the Horn God.
Mm-hmm.
And the Oak King, the two twin gods are often seen as one complete entity. So each of the twin gods rule for half the year, and they fight for the favor of the goddess and dies. And the defeated king is not obviously really dead. He doesn't regenerate or anything like a Time Lord, but he merely withdraws for 6 months and Some says to the castle of the ever-turning silver wheel, also known as the Wheel of the Stars, and this is the enchanted realm of the goddess. And Arianhod is where the god must wait and learn before being born again. It's like a lot of people consider when we die and we go to the afterlife or the Summerlands, that before we return here, and at this point, I'd be saying, no, you can dispose of my if you want, you're not sending me back there for a while. But there's a learning process. You're essentially retaught to help you become more of an enlightened being. So, and of course, the Silver Wheel, Arianhod and the castle is the Aurora Borealis. So she's the goddess of the astral skies, and that's where she rules as the goddess of reincarnation.
Interesting. Never thought of it that way. Oh, I've got so much learning to do yet. We all do, forever. It never ends. You have to study. Well,
Diana, chat room like me getting a Doctor Who reference in there.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was waiting to see when that would come up. And didn't, okay, I'm going off topic completely, but wasn't a post that you made today or yesterday something about a Dalek's birthday?
Well, yeah, yesterday was also the anniversary of the first time we ever saw a Dalek on TV back in 1963.
Okay.
Although we saw it from a Dalek point of view. Exactly. And it's only 3 sleeps, as they call it, until the Doctor Who Christmas special, which will be airing on BBC America as well as over in England.
There you go. See? Had to get that in, but I love Doctor Who and I love the Christmas special, so it's a very good thing. Let's talk a little bit about legends worldwide. And everybody has, Yule legends. In Sweden and Norway, they have the Yule goat who delivers presents on a bicycle. That in itself kind of makes a really good mental picture to me. But he was actually originally the messenger for Thor. There's also the Yule elf from the same area who is the servant of the goat. And in Iceland, they have the Yule cat. Now, this story isn't quite as happy as those of Santa Claus or the goat even, because it seems that the Yule cat likes to eat lazy human beings, those who didn't help in the village with wool gathering. So at the end of the year, everybody who helped got the work done and got an article of clothing in return. But if you were lazy and didn't work, you might just end up to be the kitty's dinner. So, yeah. So, I like...
Well, that's the other aspect is that one of the ways to prevent being Yule Kitty catnip is to receive a piece of clothing, which makes me wonder... Well, I'll get to that in a moment because I know what's coming up.
What? What's coming up?
Well, I think you were going to ask me to read it again.
Yes, I was. Yes, I was, because it's a very strange tale. So if you have it, let's read it, because it and just so everybody knows, it was written a long time ago, and it's supposed to be a poem, but it doesn't rhyme.
Well, it's not really free verse. Apparently, I guess it rhymes in its native tongue, but the person who translated it didn't try to really make it into a poem. So it has the cadence that sounds like it's about to be a poem, and then all of a sudden the last line kind of lays there.
Yeah, okay, so let's hear about the Yule Kitty.
Okay. You all know the Yule Cat, and the cat was huge indeed. People didn't know where he came from or where he went. He opened his glaring eyes wide, the two of them glowing bright. It took a really brave man to look straight into them. His whiskers sharp as bristles, his back arched up high, and the claws of his hairy paws were a terrible sight. He gave a wave of his strong tail. He jumped and he clawed and he hissed, sometimes up in the valley, sometimes down by the shore. He roamed at large, hungry and evil in the freezing Yule snow. In every home people shuddered at his name. If one heard a pitiful meow, something evil would happen soon. Everyone knew he hunted men, but didn't care for mice. He picked up on the very poor that no new garments got, for Yules who toiled and lived in dire need. For them he took in one fell swoop their whole Yule dinner, always eating it himself if he possibly could. Hence it was that the women at their spinning wheels sat, spinning a colorful thread for a frock or a little sock. Because you mustn't let the cat get hold of the little children, they had to get something new to wear from the grown-ups each year. And when the lights came on Yule Eve and the cat peered in, the little children stood rosy and proud, all dressed up in their new clothes. Some had gotten an apron, and some had gotten shoes, or something that was needed. That was all it took. For all who got something to wear stayed out of that pussycat's grasp, and then gave an awful hiss, but went on his way. Whether he still exists, I do not know, but his visit would be in vain if next time everybody got something new to wear. Now you might be thinking of helping where help is needed most. Perhaps you'll find some children that have nothing at all. Perhaps searching for those that live in a lightless world will give you a happy day and a merry, merry Yule.
Okay.
See, I was thinking that when I reread that to get ready for tonight, this time, I was like, what if this is just a way to get kids not to be upset at the fact they're getting a sweater?
Well, yeah, or underwear.
I feel like rewriting this both logistically, if I can, and make it into a poem, an actual poem, but or maybe satirize it as well. But I love the first line because it sounds like it's right out of Spinal Tap, where it says, "People don't know where he came from or where he went." I mean, it sounds like that song where they were introducing with the Stonehenge song.
Yeah.
And the second to last verse where it says, "And you might be thinking of helping where help is needed most." And I just want that to end with the word toast. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but that's got to end with toast. I don't know when.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. As a writer, I'm used to rhyme. And as a witch creating spells, I'm used to rhyme. And I looked at that and I went, oh, okay. Tells a story, but darn it, just doesn't sound right to my ear somehow.
Well, it's also because it's not even iambic pentameter. It's not even Shakespearean in its cadence, so that would have helped.
Yeah, it would have helped a great deal. So Jeff, what does Yule and the solstice mean to you personally?
Time to sweep out the negativity that's built up over the year and to blow it out. I can't believe last night I didn't even think to do this. And I thought of it now, and I think my friend is home. But I should point out to him that we didn't do that, is to open the back door of your house and the front door of your house and let the winter wind blow all the negativity out of your house. Or to sweep it out, depending on if you have a basalm, which is a witch's broom.
Mm-hmm. I do, and I've got a front and a back door too. So hey, a little help wouldn't hurt. Now, see, I kind of see it as this time of year as a time of rebirth and renewal. Mm-hmm. And as you said, sweeping out, out goes the bad. But it's also a time of hope and a time to make the changes in us and in our world that need to be made. And on a larger global scale, one person really can make a difference. So I think it's time to get a little bit introspective and plan and be positive, because there's a lot of negativity out there, but we can overcome that negativity. And it's just, a blessed time of year, bottom line.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right, Jeff, and so before we go, you have another quick story about Krampus?
Yeah, I came across, somebody had posted a holiday postcard of a creature called Krampus. It is spelled Krampus. And the photos that's on the Paranormal View wall right now. I'm going to have to check. If it's not in the album, I'll have to put it in the album because it's just too darn funny. And it's a picture of this satanic-looking satyr creature with children in a sack, and he's like tobogganing down a hill in a snow. And I'm like, what the heck kind of holiday card is this? And people were responding saying, oh, it's Krampus. I'm like, or Krampus, actually. It's spelled Krampus. And I'm like, what the heck is that? I looked it up. I'm like, oh, my goodness, there's this alternate, well, not an alternate. It's almost like a friend of St. Nicholas who helps him to punish children who are evil. And that was what was making me think that in the Norwegian film Rare Exports: A Christmas Tale, which off the air I mentioned, I'm going to have to get you a copy because I think you'll really enjoy it. the concept was that the original Santa Claus was much more of a disciplinarian than a happy, happy Coca-Cola, 'twas the night before Christmas kind of creature. And so the idea of him getting free was, I kept thinking, when's the doctor going to come out? Because that was how it was coming across. Like, if we let this entity free, the world will be destroyed and children are going to be smacked up right and left. And it was that kind of, it was almost like a Doctor Who episode in certain respects. I just kept seeing the parallels. But yeah, Krampus is this satyr-like creature that helps St. Nicholas punish children that have been bad. So while the Yule Cat wants kids to enjoy their new jumpers, apparently Krampus is like, oh, you've been bad? Why waste giving you cola when we can just eat you?
So Krampus is cramping their style, you would say?
I would think so, yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, Jeff, thank you so much for joining me tonight, and I hope you have a blessed Yuletide season.
And to you.
And as always, I want to thank everybody for listening in, and please join us next week when Reverend Tim and I will be hosting another roundtable discussion on the nature of evil. And joining us will be Dave Jones, vampire and Satanist Corvus Nocturnum, ghost cop Stacy Jones, whose son was possessed and had to undergo an exorcism, and another special guest to be announced. And that'll be on from 8 to 10 Eastern during Tim and my regular time slots. So everybody,
it's one of the nice
go ahead.
2
Yeah,
hour.
No, get it in. I know you got to do it.
I was going to say it's one of the nice 2 hour gigs you do, which is always fun to listen to the two of you sort of like Bickerson and back and forth and such. More like siblings, but
we have a reputation. Everybody have a blessed holiday season and merry meet again. Good night.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Stirring the Cauldron with Marla Brooks. Please join us again next week at the same time for a great guest and more cauldron stirring. Any rebroadcast or other use of this program without explicit permission is strictly prohibited. Copyright 2018.